Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into something that I think you're really going to connect with. The idea of feel-good productivity. Can feeling good actually help us get more done?
It's a really interesting concept, right? We
Correct.
tend to think we have to be super focused, maybe even a bit stressed, to be really productive.
It's so true. We often equate those intense workaholics with peak productivity. But all the research you sent that book by Ali Abdal, The Feel-Good Productivity, along with all those fascinating studies, suggests something completely different.
They really do. And what's so interesting is that Abdul's approach comes from his own experience. He was a junior doctor, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly demanding. He was feeling completely burned out, working harder and harder, but it wasn't making him any more productive.
He was stuck in that classic productivity trap. Thinking back to the materials you shared, what helped Abdal break free from that cycle?
Well, he remembered this study from his psychology days. It's called the candle problem. Have you heard of it? People are given a candle, a box of thumbtacks, and some matches, and they have to figure out how to attach the candle to a wall so it'll burn properly.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely come across that one. It's all about thinking outside the box, isn't it? Literally.
Exactly. You have to use the box itself as the candle holder. But here's where it gets really interesting. The study found that those who were in a good mood before tackling the problem were way more likely to find the solution. And this is where the whole feel-good productivity idea starts to click.
Because when we feel good, our brains open up a bit. Like we can see more possibilities, be more creative.
Precisely. It's all connected to what's known as the broaden and build theory. It suggests that those positive emotions actually broaden our thought processes. They help build our capacity for things like creativity and resilience, which are essential for real productivity.
So maybe it's less about forcing ourselves to be productive and more about creating the right conditions for productivity to happen naturally.
Exactly. And that's what Abdel refers to as feel-good productivity. This understanding that positive emotions aren't a distraction from our work. They're actually a key ingredient for success. He highlights three major benefits: increased energy, reduced stress, and a more fulfilling life overall.
So it's not just about getting more done, but also about feeling better while we're doing it. A&D, creating a life we don't need a break from.
Absolutely. This really challenges that age-old assumption that we must achieve success in order to be happy. What if it's the other way around? What if happiness is actually the key that unlocks our full potential?
Okay, I'm totally on board with that. But how do we actually put this into practice? It's
Yeah.
easy to say, be more positive, but how do we cultivate those positive emotions in the middle of a hectic workday?
Well, if Dell delves into some really practical strategies, one of the most intriguing chapters explores the power of play.
Play, like literally playing games at work.
Well, taking breaks to have fun is actually a great idea, but it's more about approaching our work with that sense of curiosity, a willingness to experiment, and, yes, even enjoyment. Do you remember that story about Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and the wobbling plate?
Oh, yes. That story is such a perfect example of how playfulness can lead to breakthroughs. For those who haven't heard it, Feynman went through a phase of serious burnout, totally lost his passion for physics. One day, he's in the cafeteria and he becomes completely absorbed in watching a plate wobble as someone carries it.
It seems pretty insignificant, right?
It does, but that seemingly trivial observation actually reignited his passion for physics, and it ended up contributing to his Nobel Prize-winning work. It really highlights the power of playfulness to unlock those aha moments.
It's about giving ourselves permission to wander, to explore, without that pressure to produce a specific outcome. And often, those explorations can lead to the most unexpected breakthroughs.
Totally. And you know what else? There's a term for those moments of deep focus and enjoyment when we're totally immersed in something we love. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, a renowned psychologist, calls it flow state.
Flow state, exactly. It's that feeling of being totally in the zone where time just seems to vanish. We're completely absorbed in what we're doing.
Yes. And while it seems effortless, like it just happens, Csikszentmihalyi argues that achieving flow state is a skill you can actually cultivate through practice. And guess what often leads to that flow state? Playfulness. That
Mhm.
willingness to experiment, to take risks, to enjoy the process without being overly focused on the outcome.
So are you saying we can actually train ourselves to be more playful? Because sometimes work can feel like the complete opposite of play. How do we tap into that sense of playfulness when we're dealing with deadlines, difficult colleagues, or even just the monotony of everyday tasks? What does that even look like? It's a really good question. And it's something that Abdal addresses head on in the book. He talks about the importance of identifying what he calls our play personalities. It's about recognizing those natural inclinations we have towards certain types of play.
Ooh, I like that. So instead of forcing ourselves to be playful in a way that feels unnatural or inauthentic, we can actually tap into our own individual play style.
Exactly. He actually identifies a few different play personalities.
Mm.
The Joker, the Explorer, the Storyteller, the Competitor, the Director, the Collector, and the Builder. Which ones resonate with you?
I think I'm a bit of a mix, but I definitely lean towards the explorer and the storyteller. I love diving into new topics, uncovering those hidden connections, and then finding ways to share those discoveries with others, make it engaging. What about you?
For me,
Yeah.
it's got to be the Explorer and the Builder. I love figuring out how things work, connecting those dots between ideas, and then putting that knowledge to use, building something new.
I can totally see that. But how do we translate these play personalities, these archetypes, into our work lives? Especially when, let's be honest, work can feel a lot less exciting than, say, a video game.
That's where we need to get a little creative. For the Explorer, it might be about seeking out new projects, maybe learning a new skill, or even finding small ways to challenge the status quo. For the Storyteller, it could look like finding ways to weave narratives into presentations, or even just writing more compelling emails, just finding those opportunities to make everyday communication more engaging and maybe even a little more fun.
So it's about seeking out those little sparks of joy and curiosity within our work, even in those tasks that might seem, on the surface, a bit mundane.
Exactly. Abdal also talks about the idea of incorporating side quests into our work lives. Just like in those video games, these are totally optional missions, not essential to the main storyline, but they can add an element of fun and surprise to the work.
It's like giving ourselves permission to take those detours, to follow our curiosity and see where it leads.
Exactly. A side quest could be anything from learning a new software program to volunteering for a project that's outside of your usual responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's about creating those opportunities for exploration and growth, things that can really energize us and spark new ideas.
And you know what else can really boost our energy and creativity? Connecting with other people. Which reminds me, we haven't even touched on that people aspect of feel-good productivity. For me, I'm always so much more motivated when I'm working alongside people who inspire me, people I genuinely enjoy spending time with.
It's amazing, isn't it, just how energizing it can be to have those meaningful connections with others, especially when it comes to our work. We often fall into this trap of thinking about productivity as this solitary pursuit, but the reality is that our relationships play a huge role in how much we accomplish and how we feel along the way.
100%. In the book, Abdal talks about this idea of finding our scene, those communities, those groups that fuel our creativity and give us that sense of belonging. Like, think about all of those iconic music scenes, Motown, grunge, punk rock. These weren't just isolated individuals. It was that collective energy, that scenius, as some call it, that really sparked those creative explosions.
Oh, absolutely. Brian Eno, the musician and producer, he actually coined that term scenius to describe this phenomenon, this idea that innovation rarely happens in isolation. It's the product of shared passion and creativity that emerges when like-minded individuals come together.
So how do we find our own scenius, our tribe of creative collaborators, especially if we're not, musicians living in 1960s London?
It's about being proactive,
Yeah.
actively seeking out those communities online or in person that align with our interests, our values. It might be joining a professional organization, attending industry events, or even just connecting with like-minded people online. There are so many ways to do it these days.
And it's not just about finding those people, it's about nurturing those connections, fostering that sense of camaraderie, working together towards those shared goals.
100%. Abdal talks about cultivating what he calls a comrade mindset, thinking about our peers not as our competition, but as collaborators. Remember that study at Stanford where participants were asked to work on a puzzle, and those who believed they were collaborating with others, even though they were actually working alone, they persisted longer and felt more motivated than those who thought they were working solo.
It's like even just believing we're part of a team can have a significant impact on our motivation and even our resilience.
Absolutely. And you know what else can really boost our mood and motivation? Helping others.
Oh, 100%. There's actually a scientific term for that feeling of euphoria we get when we help others, right? The helper's high.
Exactly. And it's not just a nips feeling. It's actually backed by science. When we help others, it triggers the release of endorphins, dopamine, all of those feel-good chemicals in our brains.
Okay, so being helpful is literally good for us. I'm in. But how do we incorporate that into our work lives? I mean, not all of us are in professions where we're directly helping people in the same way that, say, a doctor or a teacher might.
It doesn't have to be some grand gesture or career change. It can be as simple as offering to help a colleague who's feeling swamped, or simply expressing genuine appreciation for someone's work. Remember that study where participants were asked to do 5 random acts of kindness each week for 6 weeks? They actually reported significant increases in their own levels of happiness and life satisfaction.
Wow. So even those small acts of kindness can make a big difference, both for us and for the people around us. It's like that quote, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. We never know what someone else is going through.
So true. And the helper's high, it also applies to asking for help, which is something so many of us struggle with. But think about it, when we ask someone for help, we're actually giving them the opportunity to experience that helper's high themselves. We're doing them a favor.
Oh, I love that reframe.
Mm.
Instead of viewing asking for help as a sign of weakness, we can actually see it as an act of generosity, both for ourselves and for the person we're asking. It's so true. We've been conditioned to see it as a weakness, haven't we? But you're right, it actually takes a lot of courage and humility to admit we need support. And I've noticed something interesting. The people who are most willing to ask for help, they're often the ones who are also the most eager to help others. It's like this amazing cycle of generosity and support.
I completely agree. And speaking of support, we can't overlook the importance of good communication, especially when it comes to feel-good productivity. We've been talking about the power of connection, but those connections only thrive when we're communicating clearly and openly, right?
Totally. Abdel talks about the power of over communicating, especially when it comes to the good stuff. Celebrating those wins, acknowledging each other's efforts, expressing appreciation. It's all about amplifying those positive emotions, creating a culture of recognition and encouragement.
Exactly. If you heard that research on capitalization, it's this idea that when we share good news with someone and they respond enthusiastically, it actually amplifies the positive impact of that good news. It's like those good vibes are spreading even further.
It's like a ripple effect of positivity.
Yeah.
But what about those times when we need to communicate something? Well, maybe not so positive. Like, how do we give constructive feedback or navigate those disagreements in a way that's productive and doesn't damage relationships?
Yeah, those conversations can definitely be tricky, but they're also opportunities.
Yeah.
They're chances to strengthen our relationships and improve collaboration. Abdal highlights this concept of radical candor, which is really about being able to challenge someone directly while still demonstrating that you care about them personally.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between honesty and empathy, being direct, but also being mindful of the other person's feelings and perspective.
Precisely. Feedback tends to be most effective when it's very specific, focused on behavior rather than personality, and it's delivered with a genuine desire to help the other person grow and improve.
It's about approaching it from a place of support, not judgment. And, it's interesting to think about how all of these different threads we've been unpacking, play, connection, communication, they all connect back to this bigger theme of creating a more fulfilling life overall.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the true power of feel-good productivity really lies.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting things done, checking off items on a to-do list. It's about designing a life that feels aligned with our values, our passions, our definition of success.
For the longest time, we've been sold this idea that success equals happiness. That once we achieve all of our goals, then we'll finally allow ourselves to feel happy and fulfilled. But what if it's actually the other way around?
Right. What if it's not success then happiness, but happiness then success? What if prioritizing our well-being, cultivating those positive emotions, what if that is actually the key to unlocking a deeper level of success in every aspect of our lives? Because there's a growing body of research that supports this whole idea. Like, there was this fascinating review of over 200 studies on happiness and success published back in 2005, and they found a strong correlation between positive emotions and overall well-being. The people who actively prioritized feeling good, they tended to be more successful in their relationships, their careers, even their physical health.
It's like that saying, choose joy and the joy chooses you. It's about making a conscious decision to focus on the good, to cultivate those positive emotions. And that doesn't mean denying the negative. It's about choosing how we respond to it.
Exactly. It all comes back to choice, doesn't it? Recognizing that we always have a choice, even when things are tough. Abdal talks about making a subtle but important shift in our language, moving from have to choose to. And it sounds so simple, but that little shift can have a huge impact on how we experience our work and our lives in general.
It's about taking ownership, right? It reminds me of that story Abdal tells about having to stay late at the hospital to insert an IV for a patient. He was feeling really resentful, but then he realized he could choose to see the situation differently. Instead of focusing on the inconvenience, he chose to focus on the fact that he was using his skills to help someone.
And it totally shifted his whole perspective, didn't it?
It did. And you know what else that reminds me of? That fascinating study where researchers simply reminded participants about choices they had made in their lives. That's all they did. And just that simple reminder, that focus on agency, actually led participants to feel more powerful, more in control. They even perceived themselves as physically stronger. It's like that sense of agency, that feeling that we have some control over our lives. That's incredibly powerful. It fuels our motivation and our resilience, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It all comes down to recognizing that even though we might not have control over every single aspect of our work or our lives, we always have a choice in how we approach them. We get to choose our attitude, our mindset, how we respond. And it's in those choices that we find our true power.
That is such a powerful reminder. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of feel good productivity, is there one final thought you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I would say this. Success doesn't have to come at the cost of our well-being. It's not about pushing ourselves to the brink of burnout. True, sustainable success, the kind that brings lasting fulfillment. It's about finding a way to work and live in a way that brings us joy. And by embracing play, prioritizing genuine connection, cultivating that positive mindset, that's how we unlock that next level of productivity and fulfillment, the kind we never thought possible.
I love that. So, to everyone listening, if you could bring just a little more play, power, or positive connection into your day to day, what would that look like? What one small shift could you make? Keep that question in mind as you move through your day, and let's see what incredible things we can all accomplish when we prioritize feeling good. Until next time, everyone.